Successful open source software leaders are great communicators. And I realize I'm cheating a little bit when I say that, because I think in order to be a great communicator in the open source software space, you have to be technical, you have to be authentic, you have to be passionate, you have to delegate, or build community. But I think all of those are part of being a good communicator, and it's the communication that's key. So let me give you a couple of examples, and I would love to hear your examples or counterpoints in the comments. So let's look at, for example, Evan Yu, who created Vue. I would say from the very beginning, he showed that he is a great communicator. He wrote a really clear and thoughtful blog post explaining why he created Vue, and it was written in a way that really invited discussion. He went on to, keep really well-reasoned release notes and roadmap updates, always with a style that's very transparent and non-defensive. He did this with authenticity. He leads quietly and humbly. He lets the project speak for itself, but his passion shows through. He wanted to create Vue because he wanted to build something elegant, and he's focused on the developer experience. And he's shown that he can delegate through how he communicates, both by inviting the feedback that he does and also by empowering people to lead the ecosystem, people like Sarah Drasner. So he doesn't cling to control. So he communicates very clearly on technical topics with authenticity, passion, and a community building aspect. The next example may be a little more controversial. I am going to say that Linus Torvalds is a great communicator. He started out the project with some really good documentation. So the README and Git documentation that he wrote were really direct and very reasonable, very new for the time. That wasn't the style at the time. And I would argue that even his rants are really clear and technically rigorous. I would say that they are not effective. Sorry, Linus. But he is very authentic in all of his communication. Love him or hate him, it's brutally authentic. He is obviously passionate. He's continued to work on the Linux kernel for decades and shown a deep commitment to it. And he delegates. He created the Linux subsystem maintainer model, which is a model that many open source software projects has copied since then. So he is a good communicator when he wants to be, with very technical background, very authentic, very passionate, and he delegates, created the delegation model that many projects use. The next example definitely is not as controversial. I don't think anybody would argue with me when I say that Kelsey Hightower is an awesome communicator. He is famous for breaking down really complex infrastructure in the Kubernetes space into something that's very relatable for a wide audience, and even makes it fun. He's very authentic. He shares things like he grew up without a traditional tech background. He shares failures as well as wins. He's super passionate. You can tell that he loves what he's talking about, and he also really loves growing other people and empowering other people. So you can feel his enthusiasm as he's talking about his topics. And he's a very good, I'm not sure I would call it delegation, but very good at growing the community around him. He's known for talking about making himself replaceable. He's also really well known for being a mentor and for helping early career developers grow around him. So definitely an extremely good communicator, but also very technical, authentic, passionate, and dedicated to growing others. The next example I also think is not controversial. If you look at Selena Deckelmann, she's now the CTO of the Wikimedia Foundation, but a longtime Postgres contributor. She communicates really clearly across technical and non-technical communities. She started out on Postgres, talking about transparency and governance and, using product-focused stories to tell the technical side of Postgres. And now she's at Wikimedia talking about Wikimedia infrastructure and values and the way that the public can understand. So very technical, very authentic. If you've met her and talked to her, you feel that very personal honesty, and she shares product and leadership changes openly. She's very passionate. She's committed to open knowledge and Postgres, and it comes across in her communications. And she also delegates. She inherited the Wikimedia model, but she's definitely leading large teams through decentralized decision making and encouraging volunteers to lead things. So, a very good communicator across technical and non technical communities, very authentic, very passionate, and definitely works in a very distributed, delegated model. The next example of a great open source software leader who demonstrates that they have great communication skills is Deb Nicholson. She's the executive director of the Python Software Foundation and a longtime free software community member and contributor. In her communications, she often bridges legal, community, and policy issues with a lot of clarity and conviction, which shows she understands the technical aspects of the topic she's discussing. And she translates that big picture strategy into like things that the community can act on. She's very authentic. She talks about the challenges of community building, and she talks a lot about ethics and issues facing us in the world, in politics and tech in a way that you know it genuinely comes from her without any spin. She's very passionate. She has a long track record of working on open source software licensing, on governance, on software freedom, develop participatory leadership systems in the organizations like the Python Software Foundation and the Software Freedom Conservancy that have this like delegation community building aspect to it. There are 5 examples of open source software leaders that demonstrate that open source software leaders have great communication skills. I would love to hear what you think in the comments, either about Evan Yu, Linus Torvalds, Selena Deckelmann, Kelsey Hightower, or Deb Nicholson, or any other leaders that show that open source software leaders have great communication skills, and it's a key part of being a successful open source software leader or maintainer.